I'm Florida Smith, the school board chair, and this is your school board of volunteers here. We're excited to welcome you today with our administrators too, all present. I want to start, we don't have any changes to the agenda unless there's people in the board that have any changes to the agenda? No? Okay. So I was going to start quickly today before we move into public comments with one of the things that we posted in our regional report, and one word that we've been using a lot, which is perseverance, is defined as the steady persistence in a course of action in spite of the difficulties, obstacles, and discouragement. And I know that we have talked about this word several times, but given the challenges that we have been facing this budget season, I thought it would be great to remember that. And I believe that despite of the difficulties, this board and this communities, and with the guidance of our leadership team too, we are capable of overcoming this budget season. And I am really proud of the work that we have been doing in our efforts to build a more sustainable school district. So with that, I'm gonna open it up to public comments, but first I want to say my app here is acting up a little bit. Hold on 1 minute. So public comment is an opportunity for the public to make comments directly to the board. The public should not expect a response to their comments. The board role during public comment is to listen. The board takes the public comment into consideration as it does its work. And the guidelines for the public comment, there's no wrong questions today. Actually, if you have public comment about the budget, we are having an informational meeting right after these comments. So if you have a public comment that is not related to the budget, this would be the time to do it, and we're gonna stay with our usual time frame of 2 minutes per person. And if the public comment or the questions are for the budget, please hold those. We're gonna have a brief presentation of the budget, and then we can answer your questions. Does that make sense? So if you have a comment right now, whether it is online or in the public, please raise your hand so I can get a sense. I see one online. Is there anybody in the public here? No? Okay. So Lila Richardson, do you want to go ahead and unmute? And Mark, are you ready to help me?
Yes, my name's Lila Richardson. I live in Worcester. My comment is relevant to the discussions that the board had several meetings ago about the possible configurations for consolidation. I feel as though the board spent a lot of time at that meeting talking about that presentation and breaking into groups, and then it's not clear to me what the next steps are. And I really think the board has to be very clear about this. It's a important consideration for the towns in the district. Obviously, living in Worcester, I'm particularly concerned that it seems very likely, if not, that Doty will be closed, as well as Callis School. And I just feel as if this possibility is sort of out there, but the board has been working on the budget, which I understand, but has not really been explaining to people what the next steps will be in terms of this consolidation process. And I really think you need to have the public aware of what your schedule is, what your plans are. And I know there's been some discussion that there has to be a very robust public discussion, which includes the whole community, not just people who have children in the schools. I mean, we had children who went to Doty School. We don't have children in the school now, but this affects our community. It affects who is probably going to want to move into our community. It affects probably our property values. It affects a lots of things for other people in the community. And this, as I said, I feel as if there has been something sort of lobbed out there and then not followed up on. So I hope that the board will make it clear to the community what's going on in terms of these consolidation discussions. That's my
Thank you
That's
so
my
much.
comment.
Thank you, Lara. Any other hands? I don't see any other hands. Okay, not seeing any other hands. We're going to move into our informational presentation, informational meeting for our budget. So, Megan, you want to share the slide? Okay. So I just realized that I don't have mics for everybody, and this presentation, Ursula, Zach, Kelly, Michaelan, and Daniel are gonna help us present. So we were trying to share it among the steering committee. Diane is away, so Kelly stepped up and has been helping us. And so I'm going to start by just welcoming you again. This forum is about sharing our proposed budget and information with our community so that they can make an informed decision at the polls on May 7th. Expectations of conduct is the same. You know, there's no wrong questions. Please be kind. We're all volunteers here. We're all trying to get to the same, do what is best for all our kids. Please ask any questions at the end of the presentation that you have, and we'll try to do our best to answer those questions. Let's move into the budget. So this is the timeline. I'm not going to read the timeline to you, but the budget is actually a year-round process that helps us actualize our mission and our values. We started early on, and through the budget work, we try to make sure that our mission, our values are at the core of that. And as you can see, we started in October, and we finalized with a vote in March that did not go well. So we are starting, the budget season has been really challenging, to say the least, and school districts across the state are experiencing incredibly inflationary and pressures this year. And in a typical year, we had been, it had been easier for us to predict the tax rate and to not have that last minute vote that we had it in March, having to change everything around. As you know, is not true this year, but we are now here. We have worked really hard this past couple of weeks to try to bring a new budget that meaningfully reduces the ed spending, and we have warned this budget vote for May 7th. Next slide. In order to paint a picture of what we're trying to achieve in our resources, this presentation is organized around this four things: Vermont education funding context, what's happening in Vermont that makes this year challenging, the vision and core values, and our proposal is going to be the last part of the presentation. I'm going to run us through the first part, sort of the context, and then we're going to spread it around between the board. Next slide. The context, the realities for this year, there are current realities that impact the budget, including rising costs. I'm not going to read everything that is on the slide. Please go ahead and read the slide. But including rising cost of healthcare, enrollment, staffing shortages, the changes in the way that Vermont funds special education, changes on the weighting of the pupils calculation, reductions in the grant funding, including the sunset, as you know, of our ESSER funds this year, which is the federal funds, and that was supporting our additional staff for nursing and school counselors and interventionists in our district. We're also seeing a large increase in healthcare and our contract obligations that we negotiated. But I also wanted to make sure that besides these realities, even without an increase in our local education spending, the tax rates were estimated to go up in each town. Next slide.
Just a quick check mark. The bottom of the slide is cut off.
Oh.
And it doesn't matter on every slide, but it is gonna matter later. So we can keep going, but just have you work on that. Thanks.
Yeah, and that last line, it just says, I don't know what to say anymore, but yeah. Okay, so now we're going to move into the vision and the core beliefs. Our mission statement and the core beliefs. We want to underscore that the budget process should be grounded in our mission. The budget is a narrative that, when done well, should reflect the student needs and our community values. We have worked really hard this year to not just to partner with the community to come up with this core beliefs. And the mission, as you know, Washington Central's mission exists to nurture and inspire in all our students the passion, creativity, and power to contribute to their local and global communities. The core beliefs, I know that type is really small here, so I'm just gonna go ahead because the people online can see them, but you guys can see them. It's humanity and justice, community and belonging, well-being, rigorous curriculum and instruction, transparent and responsible leadership, and community engagement and relationships. We will be adopting our strategic plan at our next meeting. After a year of having conversations with our community, staff, students, board, we have this document that is based on the hopes and dreams and the core values and qualities that will guide the work of this district for 5 years, right? And as Megan has said before, having a strong collective vision for what we want for our children is critical. These core beliefs will guide our leadership team, our staff, and our board, and help us continue the action steps outlined in our strategic plan while grounding our everyday work on behalf of our children. Next slide. Bringing the core beliefs down to a grain size, this is a word that I learned from Megan actually. The leadership team reminds the board at every meeting that the budget that we are about to approve and we're going to share with you, the work is still based around these 3 areas. These pillars guide what we do in the classroom with professional development and with our staffing resources, and that is academic achievement, safe and healthy schools, and humanity and justice. In academic achievement, you can see there that we were one of the, and you will see them later, one of the budget parameters was to make sure that we did not take away resources from our multi-layer system of supports, and we continue to move our district forward in the new requirements through Act 173. And we use the local comprehensive assessments to make sure that we as a board also monitor what's going on in our classrooms, and safe and healthy schools, social and emotional learning, and district safety work will still be a part of this budget. And humanity and justice, the district has been working on equity indicators, and we continue the work with the Humanity and Justice Coalition. Next slide. And this is my last slide. So the board sets parameters, taking into consideration all of the information that we just shared with you through the last few slides. The leadership team then brings back the proposed budget to the school board, and they use 3 lenses to do that. It's equitable distribution of resources, education quality standards that reflect evidence-based practices, and I'm forgetting, and justice, humanity and justice. No. I just said them wrong, sorry. Student need, educational quality standards, and equitable distribution of resources. So the budget parameters that you see here were developed in the fall of 2023. And like I was saying before, to further develop the multi-layer system of support and accelerated growth for students from historically marginalized identities, support our 3 pillars: academic achievements, safe and healthy schools, humanity and justice, and support investment in school security. Consider for configuration changes that realize program quality improvements and remain under the Act 127. That threshold, that it was gone because the legislature moved that. But we wanted to base our budget decisions around those 3 lenses that we just talked about. After the budget failure, we added this other parameter and to have our leadership team bring to us 3 proposals, 6%, 8%, and 10%. And as you saw the work from our last meeting, we landed in 7.83% as a spending increase. I'm going to pass now this to Ursula, who she and her team are going to...
McKeown?
McKeown, sorry.
Thank you for my one slide.
On the feedback, sorry, McKeown. That was like my...
So we put out a survey on the budget, and we got pretty good participation, 655 participants, about half of which were parents or caregivers, about a third community members, and a third students, staff, and faculty. And what's listed on the left are the ones that the themes that were most prominent, so support for consolidation or reconfiguration, the fact that high costs are difficult for our communities and reductions are necessary, to revisit administrative positions, preserve robust opportunities for students, and clear communication for the revised budget. And I think the asterisks were the ones that were also then kind of starred, because you could star other comments that you liked. So those top two were also the most subsequently starred. And Megan was saying that the full survey results, if you're interested, can be posted to the website. And now I will pass it on to Ursula.
It's up.
All right, now we're gonna talk about the warrant budget for the revote, which will happen May 7th, and the tax projections for our net education spending increase of 7.83%. And Daniel's gonna get us started with enrollment data.
So total enrollment for the district as of September 18th is 1,428 students pre-K to 12. Our enrollment impacts the calculation of per pupil spending and therefore tax rates. Vermont's education funding formula is based upon cost per student, so generally speaking, a decrease in enrollment negatively impacts the tax rate before any changes are made to the budget. A reminder that the budget in question is for fiscal year 25, so that's the fourth row down. Later we'll talk about our long-term average daily membership, which is a more nuanced way of defining the pupils we're educating. I'm going to pass the mic now to Zach so he can walk us through budget changes. The floor is going to now pass the mic.
Thank you. So we made cuts in a variety of areas. Most of these are related to declining enrollment. In administration, we are leaving the director of technology position open. That is, we have a retirement, and we're not going to refill that. Reducing the FTE on principals, that's primarily that's reducing the number of days that they're contracted for. So principals are working during the summer. That would be pared back to make some of our principals part-time. And then a lot of, when we get into the cuts for teachers, this is really about the number of class sections we need to run. We discovered a number of areas we could reduce the number of teachers at U32 when class signups came in. And then in the allied arts, this is really primarily about just the fact that we have fewer elementary school students, we have fewer sections, and so moving teachers from full-time to part-time in response to the number of class sections being taught. It's not impacting whether any individual child is getting art or music. There's no child who is now not getting to have art because of these cuts. So I think that's that's important to understand about them. There are a couple of real program changes. Yoga is an option that's going away at U32, and then the elementary Spanish, that's something that was only offered at Rumney, and so that cut is bringing the offerings at Rumney in line with the offerings at our other 4 elementary schools. And then there are also just a number of other additional places where we turn back in coaching, in intervention, student support. You'll notice there are a couple of additions. That's in counseling. That is in part that is switching counseling positions so that we have keeping number of counselors more steady, but switching them to roles that are grant funded, so that's not coming out of our budget where we could. And then finally, we are cutting back bus routes where we can, and the administration looked at other sort of non-personal places to cut spending. And then look at this slide looks at the impacts of all of this, and Megan, you can chime in as well if you want to. I mean, this is basically just showing where we are, where our student to teacher ratios are, after making these cuts. And we are all staying within ratio, or within what our educational quality standards call for. And actually, in Calais, the K-3 average is coming up a little bit. It was right on the district's minimum, which was actually a bit of a problem. So, so that those cuts are basically okay. And then at U32, there's a slight increase in class size from an average of 14 to an average of 17, but still well within range. Megan, was there anything you wanted to add?
No, I think you covered it well. It's to illustrate, we show this slide during the budget process all the time, and this is to illustrate that with these reductions, we maintain alignment with ed quality standards.
So this is a pie graph of how the budget sits based on expense category. And this is mostly just to show that about 80% of the budget goes toward student services and staff. And so that was really, since it's the biggest piece of the pie, that was kind of what we had to work with to cut. You can go to the next slide. So this is, Zach just went through the actual detailed cuts. This is kind of the higher level overarching view. So we're dealing with expenditures and revenues are two basic categories. And then when you subtract revenues from the expenditures, you get your local education spending. So the expenditures are really the amount the district plans to spend. And that's also the dollar amount that is warned and voted on. And so through this process, obviously our failed vote on town meeting day gave us pause, a lot to work with, and we have reduced the amount of expenditures by a grand total of $2,741,000 and change. And note that was reduced by about 2.1 million just since the town meeting day vote. So we have made quite a lot of reductions since that first vote. When we're talking about revenues, we're talking about the money the district anticipates receiving to offset those expenditures. And those are things like state funding and grants and reimbursements. And then we also had kind of in our court the ability to apply some of the fund balance. And so a lot of that is kind of out of our control. The fund balance was in our control, and we did decide to apply about a little under $500,000 worth of the fund balance. I think it is helpful to understand that the fund balance is kind of this reserved money. In the past, the board has utilized that to support the retirement buyout, unanticipated spending in special education, and investing in capital improvement reserve fund. And I only say that to say that that wasn't a decision that we made lightly, but really was something that we considered in light of really needing to reduce the budget so that we would have a budget to work with going into the FY25 school year. So when we look at all of that, we get to the local education spending. This amount was reduced by a little over $2.5 million since vote number 1. And that gives us that 7.83% from the FY24 budget that you've been hearing about. And if you go to the next slide, we'll kind of see that in graphical form. So this is the illustration of how the budget has gone through these phases. That baseline number, which is $37,061,828, that is the cost of implementing the FY24 budget in FY25. And we put that there to show you that a lot of these costs, we've been going over kind of how they're out of our control, but a lot of these costs just happen. So you see this increase in our budget, but we've only cut things. It's all a reduction. So that initial rise was about 17%. That vote number 1 was 16% increase off of the FY24 budget. And now we're down to the 7.83% increase. And, I just want to end that the budget really reflects, I think, the balance that we've heard from both our voters and our school communities. We're really trying to hit that crossroads of continuing to provide the high-quality education that's expected within this district, and also at a cost that's more affordable than what didn't pass at town meeting day. So we know we have unprecedented rising costs, and we think that this budget, along with the ongoing work of our finance and reconfiguration committees, is really a step towards a stronger and more sustainable school system. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ursula to go deeper into the other factors that drive the tax rate, including those that the board is not able to influence.
So this is the long-awaited slide on long-term weighted average daily membership, which is a very long mouthful. But it is the 2-year average of daily membership plus state-placed students plus applicable weights for different grade levels, poverty, sparsity, which is our population density, and small schools and our English language learners. So it is a weighted 2-year average of our students. Our local spending per long-term weighted average daily membership is what is used to determine our equalized tax rate, which is why we see a weighted average in all of our calculations and documents. Our long-term weighted average daily membership increased from 2,184.51 in fiscal year 24 to 2,376.88 for fiscal year 25. Our spending per pupil for the warned budget revote is $14,380. Note that this number is not only a reduction from vote 1, but it's also a reduction from our current fiscal year. The spending per pupil is used to calculate the equalized rate, the equalized tax rate, with a spending adjustment applied for the statewide property yield. The statewide property yield is set by the legislature and not something we can impact. It's set to raise enough homestead property tax revenue for statewide education funding.
Yeah.
Am I on the next one?
Yeah.
Now I've lost my place,
You
sorry.
can
Yep, I'm doing good. With the spending per pupil decrease, the equalized tax rate actually decreases by 2 cents with this budget. The estimated equalized homestead tax rate for this budget was calculated using the property yield known as of April 15th, which was $9,785. This results in an equalized tax rate of $1.4696. Increases in the statewide property yield will further decrease the town tax rate, and we won't know that until the end of the legislative season. As of Wednesday, 4/17, today, the legislature is discussing a $9,846 yield. This would further reduce the change in each tax rate by just over 0.5% in each town. The equalized tax rate is divided by the common level of appraisal, which is the CLA. That's that first column. The CLA is an estimated property tax adjustment for how your appraised property compares to the fair market value. In the second column, that second column is the common level of appraisal for each of our towns. So you can see Berlin is at 72.29%, and Worcester is down at 79.09%. So Berlin saw the largest difference in their property assessment. So the difference between fair market value and how their properties are all assessing is largest in Berlin and the smallest in Worcester. And so as our CLAs go down, our tax rates go up. And we've seen a lot of volatility in the housing market, and so prices have been considerably higher. In the third column from the right, we have our estimated tax rate for each town. Actually, you can see there's an estimated tax rate and then the estimated tax rate increase. These figures combine all of the data so far, so the yield and the CLA. And it also includes the tax commissioner's estimate of what the state will contribute from the ed funding during the year's session. We won't know the final number until legislature and governor finish their work this spring. The next column to the right shows the projected town tax rates for a house valued at $100,000. You can see that the increase on a $100,000 house ranged from $299 in Berlin to $114 in Worcester. Next slide. This side compares the projected tax changes on a $100,000 house, both in the first vote, which is the column to the far right, and the second vote, which will be May 7th, the revote. Now Suzanne will share some important information on households paying based on income sensitivity.
I get a mic tonight. It's exciting.
Good.
I tapped into some expertise from some of my colleagues in other school districts, so I want to thank Michael Concessi at Caledonia Central first for his help walking through the income sensitivity work. It's something that is not projected by the AOE. The AOE does not give us information on how to inform you about your income sensitivity on this. Households that file for an income-based property tax discount will receive a credit on their FY25 property tax bill for the amount that their education property taxes in FY25 exceed the applicable percent of their 2023 reported household income. So it's the difference between what the homestead tax rate is and what that percentage, that district income rate, the 2.86% or the or the 2% statewide income rate, they get a discount for any amount that the homestead tax rate goes over those percentages. So it's very dependent on your income, and it's also dependent on your homestead value. This means that households reporting earnings less than $47,000 in 2023 will only pay the statewide income rate of 2%. This discount applies on house site values up to $400,000. So where you see some limitations, there's a list of them. Another limitation is that those income sensitivity rates only go up to homestead values at $400,000. Households reporting earnings between $47,000 and $90,000 will only pay the district income rate of 2.86% of their income. This discount applies on house site values up to $400,000 as well. Households reporting earnings between $90,000 and $128,000 will pay based on a combination of the district income rate and the town homestead tax rate. This discount applies on house site values up to $225,000. So next slide, please. I know that was a lot. It was a lot for me, so I know it was a lot. Using a $200,000 homestead value, and the reason I'm using 200 is it's a little bit closer to what your averages are, and it shows the differences a little better than a $100,000 house does. Using a $200,000 homestead value as an example, this table illustrates the projected property tax by town applied to various household incomes. These tax rate projections are based on information available as of this date, and they're theoretical scenarios. Nothing presented here should be construed as tax guidance. I'm not going to give you tax guidance. It's an example. There are links to the State of Vermont Department of Taxes included in our FAQ document on the website, so I hope you avail yourselves of that information. Also, I want you to know that based on data on the 2022 household income for homesteads filing a property tax credit claim, 71% of district residents received some discount on a house valued at $200,000. That percentage changes as the house value changes, but that is factual for a $200,000 valued house. And that is what I have on income sensitivity.
I guess that, can you hear me? Yes, that next slide is mine. As you know, the education-wide funding statewide, the education funding system right now is, the yield build is going on right now on the State House, where, everybody's been actively trying to do advocacy to make sure that the yield is favorable for all the schools. There's a lot of work that has been going on this past couple of weeks, and we're hoping for a good outcome, and I'm pretty positive that we have been able to turn around things at least slightly. Most of the budgets that have gone out to vote again have failed, which also brings a lot of instability to the state and to our staff and to our schools. But we know that our district is entering, a difficult period, and with our declining enrollment, the sunset of our ESSER funds, and our commitments, and all of those other underlying things that that we have no control in, with its healthcare and the rising cost of labor. But we're committed to continuing our budget work year-round, and we're hoping to kick off our vision and strategic planning action steps this fall. Our goal is to fully engage our communities and our students, identifying the opportunities we have together as a district, and intentionally focusing on student outcomes, community engagement, and long-term planning. We want to continue to lay the groundwork for collaboration and trust for years to come, and continue to best serve all our students and our communities. This budget, plus the work of our finance and / reconfiguration committee that is ongoing, shows the commitment of our administrators and our board towards a sustainable future. We appreciate the support that we have received over the years, and we're working as hard as we can. And we believe that even within all this unprecedented times, we are coming out of this. We will come out of this stronger and with a sustainable school system. The board is going to host an additional community forums for the presentation of the budget on May 1st at each individual school. Is our hope. We are breaking up the board. Each member of the board represents all of the communities, so we're breaking up so that you can have a diverse group of the board at each of the schools and host and be able to answer any questions. The presentation would be the same, so that we have the same talking points. In the event that we are, and again, reminding everybody that we need to vote on May 7th, in the event that we are unable to pass this budget, and I want to really stress, I have highlighter on yellow, in the event that we are not able to pass a budget prior to July 1st, 2024, we would begin our school year operating with an 87% of our current budget, which would mean cutting $10 million, doing $10 million in cuts. So just think about that. So with that, I'm gonna remind you that you can, I know there's a lot of different comments that have been going on, but you can still request your ballots online. You would get them online or by calling. You can request your ballots and vote remotely. Again, the decision to not mail in the ballots was just made because it would add time for us to be able to have this meeting with you right now and be able to intentionally share a budget with you. We would have had to have time to warn that budget. So with that, we're open for questions, both online and in the public. Go ahead, Larry, you want to come over so we can hear you? Or you can, please introduce yourself, and I know that you can project. So.
Okay, I'm Larry Gilbert from East Montpelier. A couple of questions.
Yeah.
On the proposed reductions, there's a $500,000 non-personnel reduction. Can somebody drill that down just a little bit and be more specific?
So what we did is take a line item look at non-personnel items, so supplies, materials, made a judicious reduction in those amounts. Suzanne's gonna open up and get a little more detail for you. What I would say that we've talked about is it does, it makes our budget leaner in non-personnel spending, and it causes us to need to pay even more attention to our fund balance, because one of the ways that we gather fund balance is when we underspend lines, and there's a lot less wiggle room now. Suzanne, I don't know if you want to speak to exactly your method for getting to those reductions.
Yeah, I was trying to find the exact amounts for, some of it was a capital fund transfer that we cut about $100,000 from. That was a decision, the board has a capital improvement plan that states that we'll fund our projects for the next 5 years, and we'll also increase that transfer every year by the debt service reduction that we have. So we've still met that in the plan. Thank you. But we reduced the $100,000 because the parking lot project that we just completed came in under budget, and so I said I think we can reduce that $98,765. We reduced line item reductions by $260, and as Megan said, that was some supplies, that was reducing the inflationary rate for most parts, and then also identifying some more lines that probably could be belt tightened a bit. And then interest reduction. So the school district in the past has gone out for a tax anticipation note, and it's cost a certain amount of interest expense. So when the interest was being budgeted, it was based on that scenario. And we've since, this year, we started doing a line of credit. And as the months have gone by, we are not costing so much in interest expense. So when we had to go back and look at the budget some more, I looked at those numbers and said, I think we can cut that interest expense line by $112,000. I think that was everything in those lines.
Yep.
Yep.
Can I continue for just one
Yeah,
more question?
one more question.
So,
Yes, go ahead, Larry.
Just a comment, again, $500,000, I said this last week, I think $500,000 is a lot of money to sort of just be vaguely described for my purposes as a voter. I'd like to know what $500,000 entails. The second question is, and I know it's not relevant to the vote on May 7th, not directly relevant to the vote on May 7th, but is there a number, if we're going to close a school, how much money are we going to save? And I ask that question simply because when I think about sustainability and what's going to happen after this vote, if I vote yes for this budget, and I don't know that I'm going to yet, knowing that next year, when we're in this same position, that there's going to be a savings because of all this work we did, I'd like to know now, approximately, I know you guys probably don't have an exact number, how much savings are we going to get by closing one school or two schools?
Yep. So the caveat to answering that question is these are simulations, A, which means they're just modeled numbers, and B, the board has not yet decided what of those models, if any of them, they are doing. But at the presentation on the 3rd, we shared with the board, the full board, models that the configuration committee, the finance committee, had already seen. And in terms of potential cost savings for not operating, and again, decisions have not been made in this realm, but the modeling shows annual costs from not operating 2 buildings is about $343,000. There would be a reduction in what we need to contribute to the capital fund for those 2 buildings. When you pull that out, that's about $2,673,000. And then there would be a number of FTE reductions. Just modeling based on a simulation, we should not take that number to the bank, but if you're talking about magnitude, it's about $881,000. I can't add all those numbers up in my head, but that's sort of what we're talking about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does that also include the projected savings for, if we were to all, at the same time move 6th grade up to U32?
Yes.
Yeah, it does.
Yep, it does.
Is the capital savings
Over 5 years.
over the life of those schools? Is it over a period of time, or is it for 1 year?
It's what we've identified in the capital plan for the 5 years
Over
that we
5
have
years.
planned.
Okay.
Yep, and that actually didn't include the $530,000 for the 6 to 8 middle school move reduction, because that was a separate
Oh,
FTE.
thank you. The
Um,
FTE did not include the 6 to 8.
And I would say those are conservative estimates. That's not a deep dive into how much of supplies goes over to the school that's taking on kids and how many of supplies can actually be cut because we don't operate a school and so we don't, maybe we need as much toilet paper, but we don't. That's not a deep dive into the super detail.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public here? Okay, I'm gonna move online. Any questions online? I see one hand. Chris and Kate, do you want to unmute and introduce yourselves?
Hi, this is Nancy Riley, actually, from Middlesex. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, okay. So I just had a question. If we take the money from the general fund and whether people are putting thought to how we're going to look at PCB remediation, if that's money that actually needs to be kept in hand, because there may not be grants for that remediation, because now that we've exposed the problem and they've closed down, the legislature has actually closed that funding mechanism, right? Because we've found PCBs now through the study, we're probably obligated to treat them. And there's a question of where that money might come from. Thank you.
It's a great question. What I would say is that the application of fund balance in this proposed budget leaves more than our 2% recommended, and that is for things like PCBs. In fact, it's primarily because of PCBs. So the board is applying far less fund balance than they could in a normal year in anticipation of those expenses.
Thank you. Any other questions? I don't see any other hands. Holly, welcome. Do you want to mute yourself? We can't see you, but I can see you.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for taking my question. I appreciate all the work that you guys have been doing. I am just curious about, I noticed that some of the ratios related to school counselors, I believe it was, 1 to 200 and 1 to 300, looking at the high school, middle high school versus the elementary. I'm not sure if I'm getting that right because I'm not looking at exactly what you were showing, but it caught my eye. And I'm just wondering, as we think about ratios, are those appropriate, impactful ratios for school counseling, considering some of the challenges that we are facing in a post-COVID world? And other stressors that we know that both educators and students are facing. And so if I'm wrong on those statistics, please let me know, but I just don't know where the best practice parameters are for that. And I'm certainly interested in reducing the budget in the ways that we can, but I also don't want to do that at the hindrance of really important support services. Thank you.
Yep, thank you. So education quality standards, those ratios, the 1 to 300 and 1 to 200, is how Vermont defines what is able to deliver quality education. So that's written in rules, so we're actually required to be within those ratios, and that is the board parameter that they have given us. I would also just say our ratios are significantly below those, meaning I would offer that we do have more resources than what the state ed quality standards ask us for. They range from 1 to 118, so a little over 100, which is at our high school level. The requirement is 1 to 200, and all the way down as in the chart. So they are derived from what Vermont has defined as quality education, and we're required to do that. And what we have, even inclusive of our reductions, is still well below that, well within those.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Megan, if we truly implemented that 1 to 300, how many counselors would we have for our entire elementary schools? All of them?
We have about 482, I think, when we modeled this, give or take, elementary school students. So that could be 2.
I mean, one or
According
1.5?
to Vermont Ed Quality Standards,
Okay.
yeah. And it includes counselors, social workers, other similar positions.
But not multiplicity, like all of those would be included in
Yep.
the 1 to
Yes.
300, okay, thank you.
I don't see any other hands online, so I'm gonna give one last chance to people in the public. Otherwise, we're gonna move on. Everybody's gonna be getting a flyer on the mail. They were all posted. Everybody can get their mailing ballots. The ballots have been printed and delivered to town clerks, so you can get your mail-in ballots, just request them, and please remember to vote on May 7th. With that, we're gonna move into the rest of the agenda, because I don't see any other hands up. I'm gonna double check the chat, because I see two little things in the chat. No, nothing. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming. You're welcome to stay to the rest of our meeting. We're gonna move into the reports. Oh, sorry.
We don't
Yeah.
have, I don't think we have students.
We don't have, the students couldn't come with us today, but before Keely just reminded me or something, there's flowers here today from the board for both Megan and Suzanne, who have been doing an extraordinary amount of work in behalf of all of us, including the community and our district, so just want to acknowledge that and thank you. All right, moving into the student reports. Willa couldn't be here today and Linnea couldn't be here today, but they are organizing to get the student vote out too. The superintendent and central office called report.
The report is a little light this month because of the budget. The piece that I would highlight though, and members of the policy committee can jump in. Policy committees had lots of conversations around the concept of school choice and whether or not our district needs an intra-school choice policy, which would allow, for us it's elementary school, to attend school in a town outside the one they reside. Had lots of good conversation, looked at lots of different policy options, and really landed in a place where the recommendation is not to have a policy. The district has a mechanism for families to request a residency exception if they believe it's justified. And there's a lot of questions in a school choice policy about equity. For one thing, transportation's not provided when kids cross town lines, so that inherently limits who can access it. And it also has the potential to set up, and this would be true no matter what our configuration is, pit schools against each other, right? So I want to go to this school because there's a perception that it is offering something that mine is not, and we have great schools in all of our towns. So the recommendation of the board was not to have a policy, but to update our procedures a little bit. So the procedures that are in the packet, we've been operating with them for a while, but they are updated since that conversation. So that the board loosely has a set of questions it asks itself. We sort of made that more concrete. So that is what's highlighted in the Colt report. Did I miss anything?
No, I think that's right.
Any questions from board members on the Colt report? Seeing no hands up, we're gonna move into the Central Vermont Career Center report. Joshua is not with us today, and he's sitting on the board, but I'm sitting on the facilities committee, so I can update you quickly on the facilities committee. We have, we're looking at land right now. We have set a criteria to look at land. The hope is for our career center to have a new home. We continue to work with a very unified school district in finding a space for our welding program, and we haven't been successful with that yet. But that is quick from what I know right now. Joshua is sitting on the board. He unfortunately couldn't be here today for work commitments. So with that, we're going to move into the board operations. And on page 9, you can see the approval of the calendar. There's some language there, but I'm going to let Megan talk about it. It's pretty exciting.
Yes. So 2 things related to calendar, and I realized we did this last year as well. The memo has these in the opposite order. 5.1 is your 24-25 calendar. So just as a reminder what that process is, the calendar for us needs to align with the Career Center. All of the sending schools to the Career Center have to have an aligned calendar. That gets discussed in around January, February. It gets submitted actually to the state, the regional calendar does. by April 1st, and then we take that calendar and apply our days to it. So additional professional development days, contractually obligated days, and then it comes to this board to affirm. So that is the calendar in your packet. There's one highlight, it will be corrected on the website when it's posted. Wednesdays are half days in our district, and there's a couple Wednesdays in your packet that are not highlighted, so it looks like they're not half days, they are. So there'll be early dismissal, thank you, it's not a half day. But just understand that it's Wednesdays continue to be early dismissal days, that's not a change. Questions on the calendar? Okay, the last day of school. So it's a little bit more complicated this year, which happens sometimes. So I will run through it, then I'll stop, you can ask questions, and then you can take your action. We had 4 snow days and an eclipse day, all of us, and then U32.
That's what you had.
A water day.
And a water day.
Always.
Correct. And it's a little more complicated because we have a holiday in June, Juneteenth, which is a Wednesday this year. So our recommendation is that the last student day would be on June 18th, which is the day before, and it would be a half day as it normally is. That requires that the board waive 1 day for elementary schools and 2 days for high school students. And that's just because it would be really unnatural to have kids go to school on Tuesday, have Wednesday off, and come back for a half day on Thursday. I think that would be really hard for kids and families. Teachers and staff to fulfill their contracted days. All staff will go through Friday the 21st, and then U32 staff will have almost a full day on Monday the 24th. Adjusted a little bit because they did show up to school on the water day, and then they got sent home. Questions? Chris?
Is there any concern that the students will rebel if we let them out earlier?
I'll send them to you.
I will say we're glad that we got them to Tuesday. They really rebel when it's a half day on a Monday. This is at least, it's at least a day and a half in that week.
Okay, so to set the last day of school,
Need a motion?
yes.
I move that we set the last day of school for June 18th with a let out for elementary school students at
12:30?
12:30 and for high school students at 11:30.
And then you are waiving 1 day of school for Washington Central Unified Elementary
And we
students.
do 2 for the high school.
And 2 for the school.
Right.
Thank you. Second. Second by Keely, do you get that?
I think the verbiage is in the.
It's in there, do you mind?
Yeah.
Do you mind the verbiage in the packet?
No.
Chris?
No, support.
Okay. Right,
So I can use that verbiage?
Yep.
Okay.
okay. And everybody's read it? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries, and we have a last day of school. Woo-hoo.
Floor, I'm sorry, it's 11:40 for the high school and middle school, we're just trying to make sure we got the right
The
time.
motion
the
doesn't
motion
include
just
the
says
time.
that
That's
half.
okay.
Good time.
Yeah,
This half day?
half day.
It just says the day.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah,
All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
motion doesn't
Thank
say
you.
time.
okay, moving back up.
Adopt the calendar.
So now we're gonna adopt the calendar too. Do you have a motion?
I move
Ursula?
that we adopt the calendar.
Second.
Thank you, Michelle. Have that, Lisa?
Wait, Ursula,
Ursula Stanley, second by Michelle. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries. Thank you, everybody. And now we're gonna adopt our strategic plan. You received a separate document. Daniel has it out. And I'm looking for a motion to adopt our strategic plan, and then we can have some discussion too. Ursula?
I move that we adopt the strategic plan.
Second.
Second by Daniel. Okay, any discussion, questions? Did everybody had a chance to read it? We have had a chance to look at the core beliefs, but the report, you didn't get it until yesterday, but
So does the plan, does it have specific reporting requirements to the board on an annual basis?
Your policy, yes, requires us to report on the strategic plan. That's basically what it says, on an annual basis.
On an annual basis.
What we've talked about, we shared a little bit about this in the presentation, and we've talked about it in sort of the equity indicators, is the goal is that the monitoring of the strategic plan would be baked into the ed quality monitoring plan for the district. So that you are simultaneously getting annual reports on the goals in the plan themselves, and also the indicators associated with that. You'll see that across the course of the year.
But we'll be identifying the way, say, soon to our strategic plan, this is, if that will be incorporated into the reporting?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
the strategic plan is in there.
Yeah. So.
When we look at the potential indicators for these goals, is there a plan for like sort of, does the board need to, make decisions on whether we're gonna, implement these, or is this going to be an administration decision of what they bring forward, or how is that gonna work?
It's a great question. Part of the reason why it's organized that way is because there's a recognition in that analysis that we already report on some of the things that are asked for, and that may not be sufficient, that we may need more information. So mechanically, the way the board would do that is when you receive the report, you will make a decision, did we get enough information about how you're doing? And if the answer is no, then you would say, I think we need to, either you would think about a different type of indicator. So that's mechanically how the board would do it. And I would also say that part of what the goal was, not to overuse the word goal, the hope is to allow the team to take this and refine even further down a grain size what those strategies and action steps would be. So just by that process, which isn't defined in there, might inherently change the indicators. That's kind of why they're listed as potential. It's a little bit like our equity indicator presentation. We're going to give you a lot of information based on how we think it should be measured, and we did a lot of work to produce those indicators, but it doesn't mean you can't change them. And it doesn't mean you can't say, I'd like to hear more about this in order to measure it.
Any other questions?
The
Yes, Chris?
potential for a youth advisory council, what, first of all, if you could define that, and how would it come into being?
I didn't catch the
How
second.
would it come into being?
Okay, so what I would say is, I can speak to youth advisory councils that I've been a part of, but really, we would define what that would be. What's the mechanism, who should sit on it? Sometimes they are subcommittees of a board, sometimes they are an advisory committee to a leadership team, and so they're driven kind of by the leadership end. You can kind of rattle off a few different examples of it. But really, we would define that. I mean, that's part of what we would do is say, what do we want a youth advisory council to look like? Are they connected to our student members of the board and they're kind of coming through this way? Are they connected to kind of leadership groups that exist in the schools? It's to be defined, really.
Thanks.
Okay. All of those in favor of approving our strategic plan, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. This is pretty exciting. We've been working on this for a whole year, so congratulations. And Jeannie is not here with us today, but the Great Schools Partnership, Jeannie has played a big role, and thank you to the Strategic Planning Committee too for the role that they play. Thank you, Jen, Steve, Dersiller, people that were part of it. Thank you, Megan. All right, let's move to board vacancies. So in the board vacancies, we have 2 vacancies, one in Calais and one in Worcester. So now we're gonna move into my hope is that we can interview in May. Now that we have, that's the promise that we had made, we were gonna conclude this budget work and then move on into the board vacancies. So with that, we are gonna post and request people. We have heard from one person from Calais, and we would try to do that work for our May meeting. Are there any questions on that? Okay. Anything else? Okay, so now we need to approve our audit report in page 12. We could have a motion and then we can still ask questions. The finance committee looked at it, but I'm looking for a motion. I'm gonna zero down in Ursula.
I move that we adopt the audit report.
Thank you, Ursula. Could I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Zach. Questions? So no findings. Pretty good.
I
Ursula?
don't have a question, I just wanted to say it's really nice to be able to read that there weren't any significant problems and that the audit went smoothly. And I get that it happened last year too, but it's nice to.
It's a lot of work to make it go smooth, so thank you. I appreciate that.
And especially given all the budget work that's been going on
Yeah.
at the same.
The whole team works very hard on it, so thank you. I will
So-
pass it on.
Yeah, so please thank your whole team, Suzanne, and thank you for setting systems to make it easier next year for you to have the audit. All those in favor of approving the audit as presented, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, moving right along.
I don't actually
We
think
don't
we have
have
any.
any.
Nope. No
Okay.
personnel action.
So no personnel actions. Now I need some help with the consent agenda to approve the minutes of April 10th. Could I have a motion? Thank you, Ursula. A second by Keely. Any amendments to the minutes? Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none, the motion carries. Okay, the board orders have been circulating. Oh, there you go. Daniel, go for it.
I move to approve the board orders for the date range March 14th, 2024 to April 17th, 2024 in the amount of $1,058,161.58.
Second. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Chuck.
So
Second.
Daniel and Michelle, seconds. Any discussion? And has everybody had a chance to sign them? Okay.
Not yet, no.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Hearing none. The motion carries. Oh, goodness gracious, I don't even know what to do. I feel like doing a happy dance right now. Approve our future agenda items. So future agenda items, we need to pass this budget, and by that I mean we need a partnership with our community and as board members, please make sure to vote yourselves and tell your family to vote for them. Not for vote for them, to remind them to vote. I'm not telling them how to vote, but remind people we need everybody to come out and vote. Can we share our vote plan?
Sure. Yep.
So we can look at our future. Yes, Daniel?
I think just for the record, in response to a comment made tonight, future agenda should also reflect updates on the configuration
plan.
process.
Yes. Good point. Thank you, Daniel.
Sorry, it's taking me a minute.
Yeah. All right.
So remember, you updated me first. It
Yes,
is now
so
our
May-
rotating.
Yeah, so May 1st, which is usually our learning and community engagement, we are doing community engagement across our district, and because we're gonna have a little time, I want us to dive in a little bit onto that before we completely close, mostly into scheduling another steering committee meeting. But May 22nd, we're gonna be having a presentation of our equity indicators and the climate survey. And I can't really, it's right here in front of me. Is there anything else that
Just
we're
a typical
missing?
business
Yeah, it's
meeting.
just
Yep.
our regular business meeting. And we will add our configuration and finance part to make sure that we communicate with that. So the next thing is that we have members of the steering, anything that I'm forgetting, Michelle? No? No, okay. So I would like to have a steering committee meeting so that we can plan for the May 1st. Or we can just break up into groups. Right now, since we have a little bit of time, I didn't change that into agenda, but it's just really logistics. So I was gonna just literally break us up as we are right now. So have three people.
Do you want to adjourn while you do
Eh.
that? You don't have to, you can do it while you're meeting. I think it's kind of up to you since you're just doing logistics. But-
Oh, that's true, we can do it after we adjourn and let people
Or you
go
can do it
and
live.
administrators
Totally up to
go
all.
because we're just gonna do logistics. So could I have a motion to adjourn so we
Before we
can?
adjourn,
Yes, go ahead.
I was gonna say something during the student report, but there wasn't one. I just wanna give a shout out to the middle school drama. They did an amazing production of Matilda. And they were fabulous, so I just wanna make sure that the community knows that stage 16 is amazing. And next time they do a show, everybody should come out and support them.
Thank you, Natasha. Yeah, and our students, if I forgot to say it, they one had a game and the other one had family and they couldn't be with us. But, okay. Thank you for saying that, Natasha. Okay, could I have a motion to adjourn? And then please don't go, board, we just want to do a quick logistic.
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Keely. Second by Zach. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And believe it or not, we have done at 7:30. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to everybody online too, and please let us know if you have any questions.